Yo, 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 welcome in to another show. I'm Ryan O'Leary.
And I'm Mike Zika.
And this is the Bourbon Playbook, episode 5 of the pod. That's 5 weeks now, Zika. You have schlepped your ass across the street and into my basement to talk life and bourbon, my man.
Hey, just another podcast in the basement. Shout out to my wife on that.
And I love that. It's a new slogan. New slogan. So at this point, if you haven't told all your friends and family about the pod, please do, right? What are you waiting for?
Get on it.
It is possible that only the dudes, the bros in the neighborhood, Zika, are listening. Like it's possible 90% of our listenership is from the hood here, the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
But if folks are liking, subscribing, leaving us a review, right, that will help out. So please help us spread the word if you like what you hear. But as we do each week, let's look back at the good times, sometimes the bad, right? Our individual pours of the week. What are you pouring one out for this time? Zika, what you got?
You know, going into the pod, I was thinking it'd be a little bit more on the down like last week, but we gotta bring it up a little bit. I did have an event where my pup ended up tearing her ACL, we think, at this time.
We talking about Rem Dog, or are we talking about Rosie?
Rem Dog Millionaire, man.
Oh,
little
man.
4-legged feline daughter of mine, Remy Roo.
She never stops.
No.
She's always on the move, that one. She's the one into mischief.
She's a little tank. She's feisty, man. But you know what? We're gonna put that behind us because there's something else that happened this week that I think deserves a full pour.
Okay.
And this week I'd like to raise my glass to the 3-0 Minnesota Vikings dynasty, my friend.
Oh my God, yes, Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings. I figured you were going to go here eventually because we are recording this in late September, so folks might be listening to this like later on just to like set the time frame of what we're talking about. But yes, as we speak, the Vikings, they could be below 500 at this point, you know, for all we know.
I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Okay, a simple wrong would have done just fine, but...
Like I said, I think honestly we've discovered the truth in the defense. We're the number 1 defense in the league, man.
Brian Flores.
And we got Brian Flores, KOC on the offense side. We're flying around. We're making plays. And plus we have one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league. You know, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong, man.
They're the story of the league right now. Sam Darnold, like them losing J.J. McCarthy in the preseason in that fashion. Everybody thought the Vikings were going to be like my Patriots, right? The one of the worst teams in the league. They just beat the San Francisco 49ers. They're absolutely on fire. They're on a tear. Look out, man. They're for real. They're tough.
You know, it's funny because you're a sports writer. You understand how these articles work. Well, I just had one come across my desk. By desk, I mean my phone.
Was it a good clicky headline?
Oh, absolutely. You know what it read? I'll give you a guess.
Vikings are heading to the Super Bowl. Vikings are a Super Bowl favorite.
Vikings, Super Bowl champs. Of course I clicked on that.
That's a ridiculous headline.
Man.
That's a ridiculous headline.
You know how many views that had?
Oh,
Hundreds of, maybe millions.
Probably. But that was a ridiculous headline, whoever wrote that.
Not O'Leary, that's for sure. But hey, man, honestly, the whole state of Minnesota right now, the banter's awesome, right? We've been waiting this for a long time. I'm sick of watching people walk around with these disappointed since 1961 or whatever it was, you know what I mean? We have something that's tangible that we can hold on to and see and emotionally get involved with. I think this season, man, I'm just super stoked. I'm so ready to, just tell all the haters to take a seat, take a step back on the sidelines. All right. Now it's our time to shine. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I think you should keep it in your pants. It's pretty early in the season here, Zika.
Hey, we're undefeated, man. That's all I got to say.
You got to revel in it. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously I moved out here. I lived about an hour north of Boston in New Hampshire. As you can see, the Celtics NBA championship hat right there.
Okay, respect.
On the shelf.
Respect.
So, different experience being a Boston sports fan, which I've brought with me here to Minnesota. You guys are adorable out here. Just the plight of trying to win a championship. I mean, that must be tough. Must be tough on you.
Okay, yeah, fair, right? It's the same thing coming from Wisconsin. You're right. I understand the championships is what you typically go back to, and I've been hearing that my whole life, right? But I'm not a guy, Ryan, that lives in the past. I'm a guy that lives in the present, okay, and the future. And the future is now with the Minnesota Dynasty. That's all I'm saying. And speaking of that, man, I'd love to just hear what's going on with the Pats right now.
They're awful. They have the worst offensive line in the NFL, and because of that, they're terrified to put in Drake May, which is the future of the franchise, and I don't blame him. I actually think that's the right call. Don't put him in there to get him killed. The Patriots are a team that, what are the three most important positions in football on offense? It's your quarterback, it's your left tackle, and it's your number one wide receiver, right? I think those are the three most important positions.
These days, yeah.
They finally drafted a quarterback because they had to. They were the number 3 overall pick, but they still haven't addressed tackle. They have literally no one. Their solution at left tackle was getting Chuks Okorafor of the Steelers, and he literally left the team on his own. He's taking time away from football because he wants to play on the right side, not the left. So they've botched left tackle going back to the Belichick days, and they have no wide receivers. I mean, they've tried. They tried to get Calvin Ridley. They tried to get Ayuk. Those guys don't want to come to New England anymore. It's just they have no one to throw to. They can't protect the passer. Yeah, it's not good, man. It'd be better to be the Vikings right now. I'd rather be the Vikings.
Better to be KOC than who's even your head coach? Is it Jared Mayo?
Gerard.
Who is this clown?
Gerard. Yeah, Gerard.
Okay.
He's black.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the black Jared.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, Gerard Mayo, former linebacker, actually, unbelievable player back in the day.
Respect.
My individual pour of the week. Within the last calendar year, we both went through something that is the worst. It's honestly the worst, isn't it? Right? Getting laid off out of the blue by your bitch ass company.
Fun, man.
There's nothing worse than that, especially if you have a kid or you just bought a house, like the two of us.
Yeah.
So I know this happened to you a few months back. I'm going through it as we speak, but you've landed on your feet, right? You're doing well.
Yeah, man, absolutely. It was definitely a grind. And again, no qualms with my old company. My old director, one of my good buddies, he's the one that really kind of influenced me to get into bourbon, right? Just going back and forth between here and Iowa, bringing bourbons back and forth every end of quarter meeting, right? So we've had a lot of fun. Great company I used to work for. Unfortunately, things didn't work out. Now I'm in a much better place. Got a great group of people, some fantastic leadership and mentors at my company, and couldn't ask for more, man. So yeah, I definitely landed on my feet in a great place in the field of IT recruitment within SAP ERP systems. So you'll get there, man.
I have no idea what you're talking about. By the way, you just spoke a different language, but yeah, I mean, hopefully I'll get there. You mentioned it. I have a journalism background and degree, but I've also actually had an LLC company, RCO Audio. I've had that for the last 3 years. RCO Audio is in my fucking initials, RCO. So podcast in the basement. It's an RCO Audio production,
just
folks.
Another pod, man.
If you'd like to sponsor us, let me know. Hit me up.
Hey.
But yeah, with the blessing and support of the lovely wife, the plan right now is for me to just work through the LLC full time, which is, I'm fired up about that. That's exciting, a little terrifying as well, but you're navigating that. But this has been, we've had this for the last 3 years. I've had a small amount of revenue coming in through the LLC, and now trying to make that my full-time gig. Like I said, it's all the emotions, but because of this journey I'm on, money's a little tight, right? To the point where the wife was negotiating. We have a almost 3-year-old. The wife literally tonight, dinner time, before we came down here into the basement, Zika, she literally was negotiating with the toddler on the strawberry he was eating. He likes to take a bite of the strawberry and then he wants a new one. And my wife was like, "No, you got to finish that shit. We can't afford to be just throwing away strawberries." So this is where we're at in life, right?
You eat the stem.
Yeah,
okay?
you will eat that strawberry. We're budgeting strawberries. But yeah, I got the LLC, this podcast. I've got a writing contract going on with the Sporting News. I actually had a really good chat with you before I signed the contract. We talked about life, getting laid off, bouncing back, how to negotiate things, right? You gave me some advice. We did that in your man cave while drinking a ton of bourbon.
Yeah.
We also talked about this very podcast and what it could look like, and now here we are recording it, which is kind of fun.
Meeting of the minds, man.
Yeah, and then I did end up going through with that opportunity, and it's been my first like fullish month on that job. I'm covering, wait for it, the Philadelphia Eagles,
and most recently,
and the Jacksonville Jaguars, which womp womp, right? The Jags blow. But yeah, I've been covering the Eagles and the Jaguars from my ass, from the couch. Right, no, I'm not going to the games, folks.
No,
I'm on my ass, just pounding the keyboard, creating content. It's been fun.
Love it, man.
So if you come across the Sporting News byline on an article about Jalen Hurts, please click on that shit for me. I'm trying to feed my kid strawberries. You know what I mean? Like, come on. I'm trying to feed my kid. But no, just in all seriousness, that chat was awesome. It kind of perked me up. But, it's the mental aspect of getting laid off really sucks, right? I found myself here in the office, the studio here in the basement, just like staring at my computer for hours. Just like I'd look at one line on my resume for literally hours, just staring off into space, like just not fully functioning as an adult or a human. But yeah, I'm through my first month. I'm really enjoying it. Back to my roots as a writer. For me, like, pour one out for everyone out there who has or is currently going through the layoff through no fault of your own. That shit sucks. Again, messes with the mental. This podcast and going back to my roots, writing, it kind of pulled me out of my multi-week funk. I hope the same for anyone else out there who's going through the same or knows someone who's going through the same. Like, my advice is just to try to find something that makes you happier than what you were doing previously. And I'm really enjoying what I'm doing right now. Not making shit for money, but hopefully that changes. Hopefully that changes. So cheers to that, man.
Absolutely. And guys like you, honestly, since I've got to know you, you don't go down easy, right? And I've read a lot of your articles too. You're extremely talented, all the way from, covering sports in high school to those, all the way to the interview with Bill Belichick, right? Like, you're killing it, man. Keep your head up, and obviously things will come to fruition.
Cheers to that. Cheers to the pours of the week. That's always, one of my favorite parts of the show. It's fun to shoot the shit, but why don't you start talking about the E.H. Taylor Small Batch, our bourbon of the week?
Yeah, I'm super stoked to get into today's pour. Anytime that you look at a bottle and there's so much history behind it, not only the guy that, is basically on the front cover of the Monopoly game with that mustache.
He's so adorable.
Absolutely.
I love him.
He is a handsome young chap. And then, the distillery, a picture of the old distillery on the back. I'll get into that. But all the way to the back, right? It says, as founding father of the modern bourbon industry, Colonel Edmund Hayes Taylor Jr. left an indelible legacy. I mean, come on. You know what I mean? Like what a cool bourbon. And it has the complete story beyond that, right? Really, we're just trying to shine this spotlight on a true legend of the bourbon world. E.H. Taylor Small Batch, right? So it's named after this visionary gentleman, Colonel E.H. Taylor Jr. Played a very pivotal role in the history of bourbon, actually, in general. And it's known for its really rich, complex craftsmanship. Like, that's his big thing, is quality. I think it goes hand in hand with Buffalo Trace, Mr. Julian Van Winkle. Very similar mindsets when it comes to crafting a specific bourbon at a high quality price as well. So we'll get to that shortly, but just to name a few accolades, this thing's won several different competitions. Just to name a few, the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. This is one that every bourbon drinker will know or hear of. They're always posting articles about it. It hasn't won for a while, 2014, 15, and 16 gold medals. So not sure what it's been up to lately, but it is fantastic and definitely worth a pour. So before we dive into the history side of things, love to dive into the E5 scale. What do you say, Ryan?
Oh, let's get in it. I love the E5.
The E5, the Essential 5. And again, just to recap what the E5 scale is, it's if your bourbon is in a cabinet and it was on a diet and you could only have 5 whiskeys, which ones would make the cut and why, right? So we classify them 5 different ways: the daily dram, impress the guest, the budget blend or the mixer, the Saturday night sipper, or the precious pour, or AKA the PJ Fleck pour.
Yes, I now know who PJ Fleck is.
And who is he?
Head coach of the Minnesota Gophers football team.
Sky Yuma. There you go. You got it, brother.
PJ Fleck. No idea who he was last week when we talked. I now know who he is. Thank you.
Hey, you know, and now you know.
I'm
All
learning
right.
so much with this podcast. I have Glencairns in my cabinet.
Yeah.
I have all these cool bourbons on my shelf, including that random bottle of Fireball that you brought over and have just left here. Thank you.
Fireball small batch.
Yeah,
very random.
We haven't done the Fireball small batch episode yet.
That might be a while.
yeah.
Definitely.
But yeah, this was a really we brought the E5 scale out last episode, and I basically bitched at you until you finally changed your mind on where the 1792 foolproof fell. Right? You actually I got you to change your mind because I was such an a-hole about it. So
you're a shysta.
I was all over it. I'm like, wait a minute, let's do this. This will be the new staple of the pod, right? You put it where you think it goes.
Okay.
I'll try it, and then I'll tell you what I think.
Respect. All right, so for this bourbon, fairly allocated at a reasonable price. I'm sticking with the same subject tagline here, Saturday Night Sipper. I mean, this bourbon alone is something that I definitely can't afford or find for an everyday daily dram. The price point, we're looking at 55 to 60. We're looking over 120, 150 secondary, right? But a fantastic pour, something I always look forward to. And if you continue down the line of the different E.H. Taylors, there's so many fantastic pours. Their single barrel right now is absolutely delicious. You really can't go wrong. All of them are fantastic bourbons. So I'm sticking with the Saturday Night Sipper. Ryan, pop the cork. Talk to me. What are you thinking?
I can't wait. Yeah. Quick question first, though, before I dive in here. Do you think you basically have to buy the small batch secondary? You're not going to find this on the shelf at Costco. You're not going to find this at your local liquor store too often.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Steve Johnson that doesn't know anything about bourbon and doesn't have
me.
If you're Ryan O'Leary, and you walk into Total Wine, you can always ask them, right? Probably the same guy that's asking them for Blanton's all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's typically what I would ask them.
You'll probably get this as much as you'll get a Blanton's, to be honest. And yeah, you're typically not going to find it, right? Maybe once in a while you'll find it at High Five Liquor in Chaska, right? I mean, those other stores, but they're going to be 120, 150 bucks. So if you see it on a shelf, definitely buy it. You'll see it every couple months, maybe if you know kind of the delivery times for the liquor trucks. Typically, the Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursdays are the best times in the morning. But
that's a real thing for bourbon collectors, right? You know when shit's hitting the shelves, and you know how to be the first guy in that aisle, or one of the first guys in that aisle, and you know what to look for and when. And if you got to be at that store at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday, you plan to be there.
100%.
Yeah,
and
cool.
You'll find this as well in a lot of raffles. It'll kind of be like the lower tier raffle pick, but still, a bottle that's highly sought after. But you're typically not going to just walk in and see it on a shelf. Rarely, I would say.
Let me ask you this about when you talk about the secondary market. What does that mean? How does O'Leary, who doesn't know shit about bourbon, how do I find if I'm trying to find like a special bottle for a friend or a family member or a wife, right? But I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm now starting to learn more by doing this podcast. I'm like, I want to get this bottle for somebody, for a gift or whatever. How the hell do I go to a secondary market to find it? Is that online? Am I Googling Colonel Taylor small batch and I'm trying to find who's selling it online? Like, how does that work?
Absolutely. So I would say, there's typically online platforms that sell. I think Grizzly's a big one. I mean, they can be anywhere from 2 to 3x, right? So instead of paying, $55, $60 off the shelf, you're going to be paying anywhere from 150 to 200. Like it's obnoxious, but you can still get the bottle and get it shipped to you. That's one option. Second option, obviously your boy Zeke's here, can hook you up. And the way I would do it is, I know a fair amount of people in the industry that are willing to barter with me legally, of course. But there's also Facebook groups, not going to mention any specifically for legality issues, but there's definitely some Facebook groups out there that are willing to make some exceptions and wheel and deal bourbon for fairly affordable secondary pricing.
Okay, so you're better off finding someone who knows their shit.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying. Or go to grizzly.com, grizzly like the bear.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right, it's that time to get our history lesson from Zika on the Colonel E.H. Taylor small batch bourbon whiskey. Take it away, my friend.
Colonel Edmund Hayes Taylor Jr. He's also referred to as the father of modern bourbon. So he was born in the mid 1800s. He was a visionary distiller who founded, actually, which is on the bottle from my understanding, it's Old Fire Copper Distillery in the late 1800s. So his biggest thing, again, very similar to Buffalo Trace, high quality ingredients using advanced distillation methods for the average bourbon drinker, right? So the funny thing is this guy was an extremely intelligent businessman. He was actually one of the first lobbyists working with government officials for the Bottle of Bond Act of 1897. So this, obviously, we've talked about this before, but it ensured that bourbons were aged at least 4 years and bottled at 100 proof within specific regulations in the U.S. And, looking forward to the 1920s when Prohibition kind of kicked in, it's funny because he leveraged his business acumen. Obviously Prohibition, you can't serve alcohol. You can no longer sell it, but his distillery leveraged a loophole and obtained a license for producing his whiskey as a medicinal purpose. So
medicinal whiskey, I like that.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
basically a distillery.
Yeah. For medicinal purposes, of course. But in 1933, when Prohibition ended, it was business as usual, until unfortunately it wasn't. And at that point, he ended up, for financial reasons, he had to sell it to two different individuals. And then from there, Buffalo Trace purchased it in the 1990s, so 1999 to be exact. And that's where they kind of kept the same brand, kept the history, kept everything that was great about the bourbon, and continued to produce it moving forward. And that is what is the fantastic bourbon that we're drinking tonight here.
That's wild. That is a wild story. I love that it's basically medicinal marijuana, medicinal whiskey. That was the modern day medicinal weed.
Literally.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's crazy, man. That's an awesome story.
It's wild.
Yeah. I wonder if it's just like it was when I was in New Hampshire, when the weed distilleries first came out in Massachusetts. It was legal before New Hampshire. So you'd have to drive across the border. You go up to the distillery. There's a dude with the big gun standing at the door, lets you in. It's really awkward. He lets you in.
He's got a Nerf gun on his side. Yeah.
Basically, but he's got a big ass gun he's holding. But he also opens the door for you and says, "Hi." I'm like, "Hi, I'm going to go buy some weed." He's like, "Sure, yeah, that sounds great, right?" And you go in there, and then they scan your license and put you into their system, and then you go and you have to pay cash. And it was this whole thing. It's a lot different now because now that I've gotten to Minnesota, you literally go to the Mall of America and buy gummies with your credit card in the mall.
Right.
So it's it's so different now.
For the ride home.
Yeah, exactly.
It's ridiculous.
But back in the day, this is what it was. But I can't imagine in the early 1900s what it was like having this medicinal whiskey distillery that they pulled off. That is just an unbelievable story. I think that's really cool. But it's also kind of wild that this is a Buffalo Trace brand now, right? E.H. Taylor is Buffalo Trace.
Yeah, so it's produced under the Buffalo Trace name, right? I mean, there's several different lines, all the way from Sazerac to E.H. Taylor to Weller. I mean, several lines that are just fantastic weeded bourbons, and I'm just super stoked that we're able to enjoy this pour tonight. And again, it's probably my favorite distillery. Just so many fantastic bourbons that have come out of there.
So I'm going to pull this bottle out of the little case that you gave me. And okay, it's basically the same. The bottle is the case, but that's pretty dope. I like that. So you gave me, this is not a full bottle. This is the first thing I'm noticing is you gave me this gift of a, what is that? That's like a 2-finger pour right there that you left me.
2 fingers.
That's 2 fingers. So wait, where's all the bourbon? This is, there's not a lot of bourbon in this bottle, Zeke. I wish people could see this, but there's a 2-finger pour left in this bottle. What are you doing to me, man? I thought you gave me a gift here.
Hey man, we talked about this earlier. Times were tough. You know, I
Yeah,
had some time off.
You could only afford so many strawberries.
Yeah, man. I was eating green beans out of the garden for a while.
And your wife was like, finish that fucking green bean. You're not before you're not gonna get any more.
That's it, man. Yeah. It was so I found a good place for that. I might have lost a little on the way over here, but no, honestly, I wanted to just kind of compare and contrast. So I gave you a bottle that's been open for several months.
Okay.
Versus the one I just cracked.
I appreciate that because I now know what that means. That means it's not going to be as hot as you would call it.
Yeah.
It's not going to knock me off my Shaq chair.
Yeah.
My Shaq office chair over here, the Shaquille O'Neal.
Yes.
Shout out Shaq.
Ooh.
Pour one out for Shaq.
Such a nice chair.
Yeah. You talked me into that. It's your fault that I spent $400 on my office chair. It's totally your fault.
It's worth it.
I cannot afford that now.
It's worth it.
How dare you?
Yes.
Okay. So this is not going to kick my ass, is what you're saying.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't. It's 100 proof, right? So yours is going to be, again, not as hot as mine, but the aromas, the flavors, everything should just be very in your face rather than, taking that first smell on the nose and really kind of getting that ethanol, right? It should be a lot more tame.
Okay. So this is the first time I've actually had a bottle. Like you usually have the bottle, you kind of like snuggle it. It's like your blankie over there across
tight,
the way.
Yeah,
you usually get to pop it, but I'm gonna pop it for us here. The E.H. Taylor, the Colonel small batch.
All right. Ooh, that was nice. Ready
for
this one?
Yeah, you do yours. Yours sounded more authentic
higher.
a little bit. Yeah, mine was like the deep tones, but that's kind of
there's not a lot of juice left in there.
Yeah, but that's kind of me, right? The deeper radio voice,
more masculine, I'm more feminine. Is that what you're trying to say? Okay,
yeah, I mean, the people can't see the hair.
No, yeah.
But yeah, when you see Zika, you see a beautiful man with a lot of hair.
Yeah,
I will say that.
Just another guy in his basement drinking bourbon with a man bun. Let's be honest.
You pull it off, man. I don't know how.
Respect.
I don't know how people do that, but you do.
Right. And just to remind you that it's just kind of a unique one because it's a small batch bourbon again, which basically means that the bourbon's made from a limited number of barrels, focus on quality over quantity. It's kind of a nice selling tag, roughly about 10 to 50 barrels a quarter or per month, depending on the distillery, are actually made into small batch bottles. But it's also bottled in bond, right? So we talked about Colonel E.H. Taylor and how significant his efforts were in the Bottle of Bond Act. And that basically came to fruition here because this is a small batch bottled in bond. Bottled in bond meaning single distillery in the U.S., single distillation season, typically around 6 months, aged for at least 4 years, bottled at 100 proof. So again, small batch bottled in bond, kind of neat because you don't see that a lot. But anyway, let's dive into the tasting notes here. So first off, on the nose, Mr. O'Leary, what are we thinking, man?
I don't know exactly what I'm smelling, but it reminds me of the fall.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of like the fall, the holidays, like Thanksgiving, you know what I mean? Like there is like, I know you love your sweet bourbons. There is like a sweetness that I'm getting out of this. I don't know if it's
chestnuts roasting.
I know it's a chestnut. It's
fire.
It's almost cinnamony, but I don't think it's cinnamon. I think it's I would put it in that family. Like there's some spice that's like between cinnamon and something else, and that's what is it? Like a nutmeg maybe?
Honestly, you're spot on, man. On the nose, like I'm getting a lot of. First off, do you compare to like some of the bottles that we've had? Wild Turkey. The 1792 is probably the most similar to this. Except
that's been my favorite, by the way.
Which one?
The Wild Turkey.
Yeah, it's fantastic, fantastic single barrel. But the 1792, that one hits you and punches you in the face with the heavy ethanol, right? The burn, so it was a little harder to smell those notes. This should be still very complex. You should be smelling a lot of different aromas. And for me, I'm getting that caramel, vanilla, the cinnamon for sure, and nutmeg.
So you're getting cinnamon?
100%, and even like some.
It's definitely in that neighborhood. This bourbon is. It definitely, again, it reminds me of like the pumpkin latte at Starbucks. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like it's that feeling when you smell it. I know you were fired up to bring this one in, but I think it's time to taste it.
Let's do it.
Cheers.
Cheers, brother. It's 100 proof, but it's very complex. Take that second rip.
The Kentucky Chew, man, it's always spicy for me still.
Oh yeah,
I'm still training myself there.
it's probably pretty warm, like especially on the back.
Yeah, I didn't get much on the chew, but I'm gonna try now.
Yep. On the sides of your tongue, it should be hitting pretty hard.
Man, that is smooth. That is delicious. That's a good bourbon right there.
100%. Even I know you could even put a dash of water in it too to open it up a little bit, even more. But for me, this is where I get like that rich caramel. I always taste like a butterscotch with this. And
Oh my God, 100%. That was,
yeah.
when I was trying to find it earlier, I think a like that is totally the neighborhood. That it is in that fall gorgeous, that taste, like that's it.
And then as soon as I get those butterscotch notes, it's instantly on the back of my tongue. It's got the dark fruit like cherries or plums. And it's got a good balance with kind of a spice to it as well. Not as much cinnamon on the nose that I thought I'd be tasting now, but I think it's gone to that caramel butterscotch. And then the further back it goes, it turns into like dark fruit for me. And then it's a warm, down the throat, you can still kind of feel it. Long finish, like on the back of your tongue, you can still taste it, 5 to 10 seconds later. It's still just kind of lingering, and that's typically like a warm, longer finish. And I think this hits it right on the head, man.
This is good. This is like a nice, like spicy toasted almond coffee or something for me. You know what I mean? Like that's it. It is, it's great.
Looking at the mash bill, it's funny because most Buffalo Trace, if not the entire distillery, doesn't publicly disclose the mash bill. But from my understanding and what I've heard and read is that it's typically, your Buffalo Trace, it's around 75% corn. And then another, depending on the breakdown, it's a combination of rye and malted barley, right? So knowing that this is also not only a small batch, but it's a bottle and bond, means that it's also aged for roughly 4 years. So 75% corn, sweeter bourbon, one of my favorites. It's fantastic. If you haven't tried it, do your best to find somebody that has it, because I just think this is one of the household bourbons that every bourbon drinker should have in their cabinet if they can get their hands on it.
Where am I going to put this on the E5 before we close this? Yeah, it's definitely not a budget blend. You're not putting this into an old fashioned, right? This is a very special bourbon. I agree with you 100%. It's really good. You said earlier it's not a daily dram. I agree. How are you going to get your hands on enough bottles of this to drink it daily, right? It's not going to be happening.
Unless you live in Kentucky.
You could impress your guests with this one, right? Because this is on the, you have some friends over. You tell them, yo, I got something from the Buffalo Trace line that you probably have never heard of or tried. Then you show them the friggin' Monopoly guy on the bottle, that beautiful case that it comes in. Look at that thing.
Collect $200. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, it's actually darker on the bottle than it is on the case.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, look at that. It's like...
Ooh, distinguished. I like it.
Yeah, that is very distinguished. Very black and white. Very authentic. So yeah, it is an impressive bottle. I always feel like I'm always... Impress your guests and Saturday Night Sipper. Those ones can go hand in hand, I think, but I agree with you. I think this is the Saturday Night Sipper. This is one that you kind of keep to yourself. It's just too special and hard to find, right? It's, we'll get to Blanton's, but if I had a bottle of Blanton's, my wife has a bottle of Blanton's. To those still listening, we love you. Thanks for still hanging on to the pod. And also, we're going to do Blanton's soon. The plan is when we have a bottle of Blanton's. Zika, you have multiple.
I'm trying to spell it out, man.
Yeah, you're trying to spell it out.
Stave.
You're trying to spell it out. I have one bottle. Really funny story on how I got that bottle. We'll save that. We'll tease that one for that episode.
Like that. That's a good story.
But we, the wife and I, she is about a week or two away from getting her MBA.
Yes,
so,
let's go, Katie.
Yep, she's there. So when she gets to the finish line, we're going to finally pop that bottle. That's been the plan. As the amateur people that love to drink bourbon but don't know a lot, we think Blanton's is the best. So we've been saving that for the very precious pour, the special occasion.
Yep.
So we will get into that. But I would treat this as like, this is I could see this being like a Blanton's type, right? It reminds me of that bottle. You can't walk into your local liquor store and find a bottle of Blanton's sitting there, right? You either have to go to your local speakeasy to get a glass of it and pay a shit ton,
right?
Or go online or shake down your neighbor's sack, which again, we'll get to that story.
Shout out Z-Man.
Yeah, but we'll get to that story soon because we'll be doing Blanton soon to celebrate the Weiss MBA. But
yes,
but yeah, I think last week while I was hammered on the 1792 immediately, I was up for a fight and I came at you, but I'm not going to fight you on this one. It's definitely not. It's not the PJ Fleck, right? It's not the Precious Pour. There are more rare and more expensive bourbons out there, right?
We'll get to those.
And we will get to those. But I think Saturday Night Sipper, this is one where you keep to yourself a little bit. You bring it out on the right occasion.
Yeah.
Saturday Night Sipper it is. I'm going to agree with you on that.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for not swindling me after a couple pours here. But yeah, honestly, I hate to say it, man, it could align with Impress Your Guests as well, right? The presentation, bottle, ridiculous kind of carton that it comes in. Super cool. But yeah, for me, Saturday Night Sipper, it's something that, through my network, I could definitely score a bottle fairly quickly. But if you can find it for MSRP, that around that $60 mark, please purchase it. It's worth it. If
Please.
you can get 2 or 3.
For the good of mankind, do the right thing and buy this bottle.
Yeah.
All right, let me try your hot bottle before we sign off here. I tried the exact same bourbon, I guess, as close as it's going to get, right?
Yeah.
From a different year, but it was open for months. You just opened another bottle of this bourbon. So what's going to be the major difference that I'm going to experience as I go into this?
Short answer, I'm not 100% sure just because I haven't tried that bottle that I gave you, the open bottle, for several months. Probably like 2 or 3 months since my buddy Kevin came over.
You gave me the last 2 fingers of it.
Exactly. I saved it for tonight as a special night. Actually, Kevin's the one that told me to put this one on the pod tonight. So I'm super stoked to get this one out to everybody. Yeah.
Shout out Kevin. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And but anyway, so what I think you would taste is something that's a little bit more hot, like on the front end. At this point, your palate's it's pretty burnt, right? It's at a point where you've had some bourbon. Now you're going to taste those kind of deep, complex flavors. So, 2 years apart, I think the bottle that I gave you is 2021, if I'm not mistaken. So it's 1 or 2 years apart. So you never know. It could taste a little bit different, but ultimately it should have some of the same tasting notes, just a little bit more heat on the front end, but still very complex. So I think you'll enjoy it. Give it a pop.
Bottoms up. Let's see what happens.
Give it the full swish. Don't cheat yourself. A little hotter.
Woo!
Is it hotter? Can you?
It was definitely a spicy meatball. That was a spicy meatball going down. All right, just for full disclosure too. Almost embarrassed myself on that sip. That was way hotter.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So the bottle you gave me as a gift that had just like 1 pour left in it tonight. That one went down. It was just like a perfect bottle for me. You nailed it. Like you knew that coming in. This bottle that we just opened tonight, definitely hotter on the Kentucky Chew. Like that was startling. I think I was like so conditioned to the previous bottle that I wasn't ready for it to hit like that hard. But now I'm conditioned to it. I'm gonna take another sip.
Yeah, and from what I've been told, I think a bottle can lose roughly 1 to 2% of the alcohol or ABV after a significant amount of time, so after a couple months. And that's why they always say if you have like a nice crystal decanter that you have out on your bar top, you typically want to use you don't want to put anything less than like 100 proof in that because it'll naturally burn down a little bit, right? Because it oxidizes, right? Because the air gets in there, the oxygen. So always try to make sure your decanters are full with a little bit higher proof bourbon. But this actually would be probably a pretty good one if you're willing to, put a bottle in a decanter, right? So that one should be a little bit, a little bit more heavy on the ethanol side.
Yeah, I was just going to say the main note that I taste is ethanol. That's what I was going to say. That's my main tasting note for the E.H. Taylor that we just cracked open today. Is the main note I'm getting is burn and ethanol. So and at 100 proof, that is like again, when I say spicy meatball, I mean that's a compliment. That's a compliment to the bourbon, and for it to be that spicy at 100 proof is impressive. This is a fiery little bourbon. I think it's definitely a special one. I like this one a lot. This is a great pick, man. I love that. Shout out again to Kevin. This was a hell of a bourbon, and the difference though between the new bottle and the one that was open for months is staggering to me. It really is staggering.
Right?
Like again,
it's interesting.
I went from I'm catching notes of cinnamon and nutmeg to gasoline. So my untrained palate, my stupid ass, like I'm still not there. I think if with the bottle that we just poured, the new one, I would definitely want a drop of water or like a little ice cube in there for my palate, because I'm just not trained yet. It's impressive that you could just like dive in and get the notes. Like that's cool. Like I know there's people out there probably listening that can do that. I'm not that guy yet. I want to get there, but yeah, I think I could use like a drop of water or like one ice cube maybe.
No, my the guys I drink with for the most part outside of the bourbon group, my cousins, they're usually a 1 cube kind of crew, so that's typically how I serve it, and absolutely acceptable.
Like a small cube.
Small cube. I mean, if I'm going cubes, so small cube's gonna melt fairly quick, right? So you're gonna lose a lot of those characteristics right off the bat. So that's why I typically go with a larger cube, because it melts slower. So it's just enough where, if you're gonna sip on a bourbon for 20, 30 minutes, right, then I'd recommend using a big cube. Otherwise, it's gonna be so diluted that to me it ruins the bourbon.
I've actually run into this. I'm like, should I put the bigger cube or the smaller cube in my bourbon? But now I'm realizing from you bastard, that the bigger cube actually melts slower.
Right. So
why didn't I know that going in?
Right. If I'm making a Manhattan or an old fashioned for a buddy, I'm always using a thick cube, so it melts slow. Because you're gonna sit around, play some euchre, categories. I mean, solitaire, you name it, right? King's Corner.
Solitaire?
Solitaire. I meant.
Wait, you have your boys over and you play solitaire? What?
No, I said the wrong game.
Yeah, seriously, solitaire?
It's it starts with an S. It's a card game. It's got a big board. It's like Connect 4, dude.
Oh, is it sorry?
No. Could you imagine? All right, boys, group text. What y'all doing this weekend?
I mean, that's
Seeker House. We're putting it down. Sorry.
I mean, is that worse than
BYOB.
solitaire? Honestly.
Sequence, bro.
I never heard of that.
Oh, dude.
Is that like a Minnesota thing?
Yes.
I'm sure it is.
Sequence is like an adult form of Connect 4 with 2 decks of cards on a game board. 2v2, very competitive, very masculine.
It doesn't sound masculine. That's the one. That's where you lose me.
I'm bringing it over next week.
It's very masculine.
Me and Liz are gonna kick your and Katie's butt.
I was gonna say we need more people.
Yes.
So okay. Thanks for joining us on the Bourbon Playbook podcast. Remember, just like Colonel E.H. Taylor, we get better with age. So if you're feeling a little rusty, just blame it on the spicy bourbon.
Keep pouring, keep laughing, and let's pretend we have our lives together until next time. Cheers, folks.
Cheers.